I am Wendy Carstairs. I am one of the partner solutions leaders on the security side at Microsoft UK, and I am delighted to come and share with you some of the highlights of the Microsoft Annual Digital Defence Report that was very recently released. It's our third one and is our kind of unique vantage point of what we're seeing from all the threat intelligence that we gather globally in the world today. So, our mission at Microsoft is to enable and empower every person and every organisation on the planet to achieve more, and we'd like to do that in a safe and secure way. My mission here today is to really help to disseminate some of the top issues that we're seeing and to therefore empower you all to go home with just 5 things that, if you are able to go and implement these quite quickly in your organisation as it stands today, will protect you from 98% of the threats that we see hitting all of our services globally this year. And the report is pretty in-depth. It is available on microsoft.com/MDDR, if anybody would like to go and have a look. I warn you, it is 113 pages. So in order for me to empower you, I have stayed up all night reading 113 pages, and I'm going to give you just the necessary bits in the next 20 minutes to help you take something from that. So we do have a unique vantage point based across all of the Azure, Microsoft 365, cloud, all of the billions of endpoints. Every single day we are synthesizing 43 trillion signals all through our threat intelligence and our various parts of the organization. And we've got 8,500 people working in cyber threat defense across engineering, researching, across the board. And last year alone, we blocked over 70 billion threats worldwide, protecting everybody. So we have a pretty unique view, I think, and our view on this is to be as transparent as possible in what we're seeing and try and aggregate that into something that's truly useful for everybody else, because we believe that the more transparency, the more visibility there is in actually what is happening out there, the more people can make appropriate decisions based on what they need to do, not only today, but in the future as it comes. And a lot of this is enabling us to do a prediction. Like, this is what we're seeing now, what's the trend and what might happen next, so that our product development as well can then be ahead of the curve, and we can also put it out there to help people stay ahead of the curve themselves. So it's pretty unique, but like I said, 113 pages. Let's rattle through it and see what we get to today. So, the state of cybercrime. What are we actually seeing today that is actually happening in the real world? $6 trillion will be stolen this year alone in cyber attacks globally. And it's increasing. That's tracking towards $10 trillion in the next 3 years per year will be stolen through various types of cybercrime. So what are we going to do about it? The first biggest one we're seeing is ransomware. Ransomware is not only a growing threat, but it's been commercialized. There's money in it, so people are going to go and make it happen. So part of what we have now analysed is that for every one victim, you can go back up the line and see where did that start. So there are people involved at the front end making this happen. This is human operated. There are people, it's not just automated. And if you look at, of every 2,500 potential targets out there, if 2,500 organisations are targeted, 60 of those will have an exposure for some weakness, exploitation that's possible in the network or the infrastructure. 20 of those will be successfully compromised. So a third of the ones with an exploit that's possible, 20 will be compromised. And then the person operating the ransomware will pick just one, launch the attack, and then run through and invariably get some money out of it. The impact of these is ramping up. I'll give you 3 examples. One example back in February was with the hundreds of petrol stations in northern Germany were taken offline, unable to take any transactions and payments for a significant amount of days because 2 organisations were targeted with a ransomware. Then in March, we saw the Greek postal service was attacked and unable to deliver mail over several days and unable to take any transactions. And then back in May, the Costa Rican government had to call a national state of emergency because some of the healthcare services were targeted and they were unable to take any services, they were unable to take any payments through their customs and their tax services. So they share those stories with us and they are happy for us to be open with them because this is real and it's happening globally. So there's money in it. Where did we get to? Let's just... the really interesting thing about, I think, ransomware at the moment is this concept of ransomware as a service. So ransomware isn't just maybe an exploit that's been packaged up and delivered by one organisation. What we're seeing is it's multi-tiered. So at the top tier, you've got an operator, a ransomware operator. This is a group or a person they're writing the code. They're finding an exploit, they're looking for something, they're writing the code, they're packaging it up. They're then selling that on to any number of affiliates. An affiliate could be a single person, or it could be a group of people, or it could be invariably a cybercrime organisation. So they're buying this, and then they're going out and deploying it. And in order for them to deploy it, they go to another person in the chain who is an agent broker. And the broker will be engaging with people in the dark web to buy lists of credentials. Maybe it's a list of passwords that have been stolen, whatever. But they're a broker between the affiliate who's going to launch the attack and actually buying credentials that someone else has gone out and got out from organisations. So it's big business. There's people in it all the way through. There's a supply chain involved, and it's not going to go anywhere. What we are seeing that's really interesting is that these affiliates they're using a piece of ransomware, and then when that one is understood more and it's been maybe blocked and attacked, we saw this with Conti. Conti was one of the biggest threats and biggest deployed ransomwares out there last year that had the biggest impact. Once Conti had been identified, protected against, those affiliates very quickly then moved off and started deploying other ransomware products. So we actually detect them by the way they operate. So it's almost like a signature. Different affiliates, different individuals operate in fairly unique ways. So we can actually track those individuals. Obviously, you don't know who they are, but we have code names for them, and we track them, and then we'll see them pop up launching another ransomware attack. And because we can see those as they're the ones launching it, we can very quickly identify those and bring those new attacks kind of contained. So it's not going anywhere, lots of money. Second biggest one, phishing. As our colleague Malcolm from Mimecast just sharing with us, phishing and email is not going away. Absolutely seeing it continue. The bottom graph there, interestingly, just before the start or at the start of the Ukraine war, a huge amount of phishing emails with Ethereum or cryptocurrency wallet addresses were seen in them. They've kind of tailed off now, but that was something that we're seeing happening. But the business email compromise, or BEC, as you see it on the, what have we got here? Got a pointer? There we go. This blue bar here, that's the business email. So that's the phishing threats that we're seeing in there. We've got a number in here, $2.5 billion in business email compromised. Yep, 2.4 billion in losses in 2021 in business email compromised through phishing attacks, and it's over half the top 5 internet crimes happening still. So what happens? We get an email in. It kind of looks like someone in our organisation. It's what we call a lure. So the lure comes in, looks like someone within our organisation, but if we look really, 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 really closely, maybe one digit, maybe one character in that email or header has been changed. Maybe it's a 0 to an O or an I to a 1. There's just a slight change made, but it looks like maybe it's someone we reckon we might be working with. And then the lure starts a conversation, and then maybe 3 or 4 engages down the line, there'll be some reason to punch out and go log in. And this here, people are getting really good at faking Microsoft 365 logins. We're seeing dynamic logins come up, and the login will trick you into putting in your credentials. and then that's it. So just imagine someone's now got your credentials to log into your organisation. I can only imagine if somebody got my credentials to log into Microsoft.com, just what they could then do. What could they approve? What could they order? What could they send out? And what could they access? Do they have my credentials? Because I've been tricked into giving them out. Now, I won't be tricked into giving them out because we employ multi-factor authentication, and actually I don't even know what my password is. I've only entered it once, and that was when I first set up my environment 4 years ago, because we use MFA, we use fingerprint, we use PIN, the whole lot. But the number one exposure for both of these threats, whether it's phishing or whether it's ransomware, is identity. And all of the majority of engagements around ransomware was that there was no multi-factor authentication turned on. And the number one thing you can do to protect yourself in your organisation against phishing is to employ multi-factor authentication. Anybody might get it right. So, phishing. Nation state. We track all the nation state threats. This year's events with Ukraine are absolutely no different. The 4 nation states we track, the primary ones are Russia, are North Korea, China, and Iran. Each nation-state threat gets assigned a unique chemical element code. One example of this was this year with Nobelium, and that was a supply chain attack through the managed services supply chain across various different cloud providers. So several layers into the supply chain, vendors service providers were exposed, and that was the Nobelium attack. So we track these because they're unique, they're dangerous, and they're targeted. Ukraine's been particularly interesting because, firstly, for the first time in one of our cyber defence efforts, we were able to respond to some of those threats before we even knew what the ransomware actually was underneath, because it was behavioural, it was based on these are the things that are happening, and they could be blocked straight away. Working with the Ukraine government, we noticed that there would be a spate of cyber attacks against critical national infrastructure locations, government locations, and then within a number of hours, a number of days, those locations that had suffered cyber attack were then physically attacked, missiles, rockets, and the area is destroyed. So cyber crime, cyber warfare has been a key part of the cyber defence of the Ukraine for this war. One of the things that the Ukrainian government wanted us to do was to help them move their services, if you can hear my mic okay, was help them move their services out of, a lot of they had on-premise locations. Some of the reason I put this graph up here is to show you just that ramp up on the bottom right of the volume of attacks, but also that it's across lots of different industry sectors, heavily towards IT still, but across all industry sectors and spread across the world. So different nation states are targeting particularly the US and Britain, and also Australia, India, Canada, Western Europe, such as Germany. So we see the infrastructure need is changing. When we look at the infrastructure that is attacked, then kind of the old school mentality of I need my services, my data within my own sovereign territory. That's a lot of the thinking that governments have had, up to this year, really. Actually, I need some of that, highly secure information within my own or within an environment that's very, very near to me. What Ukraine has taught us is that is absolutely no longer fit for purpose. Ukraine has moved all of their data out to Azure services distributed around the world, and so it's distributed. There is no single point of attack, and also it's outside of their country. So they kind of protected their data by moving it outside their country rather than having it within their own sovereign cloud or sovereign territory. So it's really shifted things on their head. As a result, many of the other governments worldwide have issued resilience programs to say that you shouldn't have all your data resided in your own sovereign territory anymore. So it's kind of flipped the whole thing on its head. IT and OT, I believe you had a talk on this today, or there will be. Yes. Just to show it is absolutely on the up. From what we're seeing, the data we get, IoT and OT attacks are on the up. Fortunately, the attacks on the web front ends are going down, and that's because a lot of devices have been taken off having kind of internet facing, which is great, or they've had that piece disabled. So that's good, but attacks are on the up. And the firmware within these is being targeted. So you have the software sitting in them, a whole bunch of exposures. The weak password is one of these. People still using kind of MD5 hashes for passwords within devices. That's just not okay anymore. Expired certificates, just software that's been written in a way that has exposures and can be compromised. So we are seeing these devices being compromised. They do need to be hardened, do need to be protected. Something a little bit new, fake news, propaganda. This is tracking the Russian propaganda index. So what we're trying to do is to bring together a view on the cyber influence operations. So what's going on out there that's pushing out information, as well as bringing that together with the threat services and the threat intelligence. So when we bring all this together, we get this kind of index of, okay, where's this kind of fake news propaganda coming from? And this is an index that shows the kind of the start of the propaganda ramping up towards the war and then peaking around that February time when the war started, as one example. So what can you do? What can you do? Good news is that cyber hygiene is your best approach to protecting yourselves against ransomware, against phishing, against any of those kind of Nobelium or any of those nation-state attacks. And good cyber hygiene will protect you against 98% of these attacks. The number one thing you can do, and if you do one thing today, please go home and do this: enable multi-factor authentication. Either apply it on your high profile, your high importance accounts, so your global admins, your administrator accounts, anything that's used to administrate anything within the cloud, within your on-premise environment, anywhere, please, 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 please put multi-factor authentication on. It is your biggest protection. It's not the be-all and end-all. It's not going to, we know that there are issues with it, but it's definitely a lot better to have it than to not have it. Number 2, apply the zero trust principles. So zero trust, protect, act as if nothing is trusted. Trust nothing and create your cyber resilience program based on that. Third one, use modern anti-malware. So something with extended managed defense response within it that can actually look, see, mitigate automatically, that's got automation in it. Fourth one, patching. We know that moving things to the cloud is better because the cloud is patched. And we know that having things outside the cloud or on-premise is not better because over half of devices out there that are on-premise are not patched and not kept up to date. So what happens? These ransomware operators, these malicious nation states, they're looking for exploits. They find an exploit. They publish it on the dark web. Somebody picks it up, builds some ransomware around it. Vendors pick it up, go, whoa, we need to patch that. We release a patch. Lots of other entities see that as, there's going to be lots of people out there with this exposure. By not patching, you're like putting a flag outside. Please, come attack me. Many others are patched. So please, please, please keep up to date. Find a method of keeping your servers, your devices up to date. Move as much as possible as you can to the cloud because it will protect you. You will be more protected there. Number 5, protect your data. Put it somewhere and mark it in a way that is appropriate to the data, to the sensitivity and the content that you have. Either put it in secure cloud services, they are more secure than on-premise, or have it marked in such a way that you know it's protected. So those 5 things. Yes, look at that. Activity completed, thank you. Those 5 things, anybody can apply that in any environment. Even on your own consumer, if you know, your Gmail, your Outlook.com, please turn on MFA. You're better with it than without it. And so I'm going to ask one question, and there I've got a lovely Microsoft polo shirt for the first person that can answer it correctly. What's the number one thing that anyone should do to protect themselves against cyber ransomware and phishing attacks? Enable MFA? Well done, that man. Here we go. Can you catch? Close. There we go. Thank you very much for listening, and the report is available on microsoft.com/MDDR.
Brilliant. Thank you, Wendy. Thanks so much for that. Really, really interesting to hear what you've been doing over in the Ukraine as well, which is particularly fascinating. Does anyone have a very, very quick question for Wendy? I know the lights have just dropped down, so I can't see you again. However, we've maybe got the opportunity of one quick question. No, I had one for you, however, as a backup. Was there anything that was particularly surprising in the defence report findings?
The ransomware as a service, really.
Right, okay.
Yeah, the sheer monetisation of and the industrialisation of ransomware. It's not just small groups who are creating stuff and pushing it out there and doing the attacks. This is mass scale, big business.